Sometimes betrayal doesn't begin in darkness. Sometimes it unfolds beneath chandeliers, in a room filled with laughter, music, and the illusion of love. Tonight, Olivia stood outside the tallest glass-walled restaurant in the city, the same place her husband, Nathaniel Holt, once took her to celebrate their 10th anniversary. But this time, it wasn't an anniversary. It was his business celebration. That's what he told her. She held a bouquet of roses, red, perfect, trembling slightly in her hands. Before we continue, tell us in the comments, what would you do if the person you trusted most chose to humiliate your love in public? And don't forget to subscribe, because what you're about to hear is not just a story, it's a mirror of how love can rise again from the ashes of pride. The city shimmered below her like scattered jewels. Inside the restaurant's second-floor banquet room, people clinked glasses, laughed loudly, and lifted their phones to record the moment. From where Olivia stood, framed by the glass, she could see him, Nathaniel, her husband of 12 years, the man she once prayed for, cried for, and built a life beside. But he wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a woman in a champagne-colored dress. Her name was Victoria, a polished PR consultant who had been helping him manage his brand. That's how the story started. And like all modern betrayals, it began with late-night texts and excuses about deadlines. Now, Nathaniel's hand was on Victoria's waist, his head tilted close, their laughter synced like a duet rehearsed too many times. Olivia felt her throat tighten. The roses, once a gesture of love, now felt like a cruel reminder. A car honked below. She didn't move. Inside, someone announced into a microphone, "Let's raise a toast to Nathaniel Holt, a visionary, a man who knows how to celebrate success." The crowd erupted in applause. Glasses lifted. Champagne sparkled. And under the chandeliers, Victoria kissed his cheek, lingering, soft, deliberate. Olivia's fingers pressed around the stems of the roses until one thorn pierced her palm. A tiny drop of blood slid down, unnoticed by the world inside the glass. That pain, that sting, it anchored her. It reminded her she was real. Hours earlier, she had spent the afternoon trying to look perfect, as wives often do when they sense something is slipping away. She wore a soft ivory gown, her hair loose, perfume delicate but firm, the scent he once said reminded him of their honeymoon in Santorini. She rehearsed in her heart what she'd say when she surprised him tonight. Something gentle. Something hopeful. But standing there now, watching him in another woman's arms, all her rehearsed lines turned to dust. For years, she had built him, supported him through failures, managed his temper, and turned their home into a sanctuary of peace he barely noticed. And now, here he was, celebrating success, without her. And yet, she didn't cry. Olivia Holt was not a woman who broke easily. Inside her silence lived the patience of storms. She turned away from the glass wall, and for the first time that night, she smiled, not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that signals something within her had shifted. It is said that a woman's breaking point is not the moment she's hurt. It's the moment she decides she will no longer be silent about it. That night, Olivia didn't drive home. She drove to a quiet part of the city, a small, hidden chapel she hadn't visited in years. The air smelled like candle wax and forgiveness. She sat in the last pew, roses still in hand, and whispered, not to God as she once did, but to herself. If love must die, let it die with dignity. The next morning, the tabloids were already whispering about Nathaniel's mystery companion at the gala. The photo spread online like wildfire, Victoria's smile glowing beside him. Olivia didn't respond. She didn't call. She didn't post. She simply disappeared from the narrative, and for the first time, Nathaniel noticed the silence. At his office, his assistant hesitated before speaking. "Sir, Olivia didn't attend last night's dinner. She sent no message." Nathaniel waved it off. "She's fine. She always comes around." But deep down, there was an unease he couldn't shake, because Olivia had always been there. Through every scandal, every deal, every storm, she had stood beside him. And now, nothing. Meanwhile, Olivia drove north, to a place that used to mean something, her hometown. The air was clearer there, the people slower, and the silence less cruel. She met her old college friend, Daniel. Daniel had been her confidant years before she married Nathaniel. Kind, grounded, and impossibly loyal, he was the type of man who listened without interruption. He now worked as a therapist in the local community center. When she saw him again, she realized how long it had been since someone looked at her and truly saw her, not as Mrs. Holt, not as a billionaire's wife, but simply as Olivia. He poured her a cup of coffee. "Still roses?" he teased gently, seeing the bouquet beside her. She smiled faintly. "They were supposed to mean something last night." He nodded. "They still can. Sometimes meaning changes, but beauty remains." His words lingered, quiet, heavy, healing. Over the next few weeks, Olivia stayed in town. She volunteered at Daniel's center, helping young girls who had survived heartbreak, rejection, and the bruises love can leave behind. In their faces, she saw pieces of herself, once hopeful, once fragile. One afternoon, while organizing donation boxes, she overheard laughter outside. Daniel was teaching a group of teens how to build trust exercises, light-hearted, silly, but powerful. Olivia laughed too, without realizing. It was the first genuine laughter that had escaped her lips in months. And somewhere in that echo, something returned, not love for Daniel, not yet, but love for herself. Back in the city, Nathaniel's celebration was over. Victoria had begun demanding more time, more status, more public affection. But now that the thrill of secrecy had faded, Nathaniel found himself haunted by memories of the woman who used to calm him with silence. He scrolled through his phone late at night, staring at old photos of Olivia. Her laughter in their kitchen. Her sleepy voice in the mornings. Her hands, always steady, always sure. He called her number once. Then twice. No answer. By the third week, he began sending flowers, expensive ones. White orchids, tulips, lavender roses. Olivia never replied. Sometimes God does not punish men with loss. He punishes them with realization. And realization, when it comes too late, is a wound that bleeds pride. Olivia had once prayed for her husband's success. Now, she prayed for her own peace. Then came the invitation. An envelope, white, elegant, handwritten, arrived at Nathaniel's office. It was from Olivia Holt. The message was brief. "You're invited to my celebration. Bring whoever you like." There was no address, only coordinates. He looked them up. It was the ballroom of the Grand Aurelia, the same venue where he had celebrated with Victoria weeks earlier. Nathaniel frowned, confused, but intrigued. Victoria, beside him, smirked. Your wife's hosting a party now." He said nothing. He simply stared at the paper. That evening, the ballroom glittered with anticipation. Photographers lined the entryway. Guests murmured, "Olivia Holt?" After all this silence. And then, the doors opened. She walked in, radiant in a white gown that shimmered under the chandelier light. Every camera turned. Every whisper died. She looked unbroken, powerful, calm, divine. Behind her walked Daniel, dressed in a black suit. His hand was steady on her back, not possessive, but protective. They looked like two people who had walked through fire and learned to breathe again. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. Victoria froze beside him. And the entire room, every glittering soul, waited to see what Olivia would do next. Before we continue, tell me in the comments below. Was Olivia right to walk away in silence, or should she have confronted him earlier? Your opinion might just reflect your own story of love, loss, and renewal. They said revenge was loud, but Olivia's was silent, graceful, deliberate, dressed in white. The ballroom gleamed like a diamond under the chandeliers. Every detail mirrored perfection, the polished marble floor, the long rows of white roses, the golden light cascading like melted champagne. But beneath that perfection was tension, thick, unseen, and electric. As she entered, the murmurs began. "Is that Olivia Holt? She looks radiant. Did she really invite him and his mistress?" Her heels clicked softly against the marble, the only sound in a room suddenly afraid to breathe. Olivia didn't glance at anyone. Her gaze was steady, her heart calm. Beside her, Daniel walked with quiet strength, not as a man seeking attention, but as a protector of peace. At the far end, Nathaniel Holt stood frozen, disbelief spreading across his face like a shadow. His glass of champagne trembled slightly in his hand. Victoria, beside him, tightened her grip on his arm and whispered, "Don't go to her." But pride has its own gravity. He couldn't help himself. He crossed the room slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last. Each click of his shoes was a memory, the sound of a life he had once shared with her, now echoing like an elegy. When he reached her, words failed him. She was right there, more beautiful, more composed, more unreachable than ever. "Olivia," he began. His voice cracked. "What is this?" She smiled faintly, holding his gaze. "A celebration," she said softly. "I thought you liked those." A few guests exchanged glances. The silence that followed was unbearable, too sharp, too clean. Nathaniel's eyes darted to Daniel, who stood beside her, calm and dignified. "And him?" he asked bitterly. "Is this supposed to be your payback? You think showing up with some man?" Daniel interrupted gently, his voice even and polite. "She didn't need a man to walk in here tonight. She just needed her peace back. I'm only here to make sure no one steals it again." Gasps rippled through the room. Victoria's lips curled. "Peace," she laughed, stepping forward. "You mean revenge? You couldn't handle seeing him happy, so you came to ruin his night." Olivia turned toward her, not angry, not bitter. Her eyes were calm. "No, Victoria. I came to remind myself what kind of woman I refused to become." The words hit like glass shattering in a silent room. Victoria froze. Nathaniel swallowed hard. And the cameras, oh, the cameras, captured every breath, every flicker of emotion. The irony was poetic. The same ballroom where he once flaunted his success now held the funeral of his pride. But Olivia hadn't come to humiliate him. She had come for closure. She stepped forward slightly, her voice clear. "I once thought love meant forgiving everything, even what breaks you. But I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the fire. It means walking out of it and no longer smelling like smoke." Her voice trembled, just for a second, enough for the crowd to feel the humanity beneath her composure. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "You think walking away makes you stronger?" She nodded softly. "No, Nathaniel. Walking away doesn't make me stronger. Healing does." He tried to speak, but words refused to come. Behind him, Victoria stepped back, embarrassed. The crowd had turned, their sympathy no longer on her side. "Olivia, I made a mistake," Nathaniel finally said. "You know I love you. I just—" She interrupted gently, "loved yourself more." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the chandeliers seemed to listen. Nathaniel's mind spun backward, to their early years. Her laughter in the kitchen as she burned the first breakfast after their wedding. The way she hugged him when he lost his first investor. How she prayed for him when he didn't believe in anything at all. He had turned that woman into a ghost of herself, and she, somehow, had resurrected stronger. "Olivia," he whispered, eyes glassy. "Please, don't do this here." Her eyes softened. "You did this here." "I'm just finishing it." A reporter whispered to another near the back. "This is history. This is what accountability looks like." Daniel stepped slightly aside, letting Olivia stand alone, not as a symbol of scandal, but as a testament of rebirth. The MC, unsure how to proceed, nervously cleared his throat. "Mrs. Holt, Miss Holt, would you like to give your speech?" She smiled at the correction. "Yes," she said simply, walking to the podium. She stood under the chandeliers, her reflection mirrored in the polished floor, and for the first time, she didn't feel like a wife trying to be enough. She felt like a woman who had learned her worth. Her speech wasn't rehearsed. It came straight from the soul. "Tonight, I celebrate the woman I became when everything fell apart. I celebrate the strength to forgive without forgetting. The courage to walk alone when love no longer feels like home. And the grace to stand in front of those who broke me and still smile." Her words carried through the hall like a psalm. Sometimes God lets your heart break not to destroy you, but to rebuild you with unshakable dignity. Tears glistened in strangers' eyes. Even those who had gossiped about her now felt reverence. Nathaniel turned away, ashamed, humbled. Victoria quietly slipped out the back door. Olivia closed her speech with a small smile. "To everyone who has ever been underestimated, let your silence be your power, and your comeback be your prayer." The room erupted in applause, not loud and chaotic, but slow, reverent, thunderous. Later that night, after the cameras left and the guests began to disperse, Nathaniel approached her one last time. The chandeliers above them flickered, reflecting a softer glow now, like the remnants of a storm. "I know I can't undo what I did," he said quietly. "But I want you to know. I miss you. Every part of you." She looked at him for a long moment. Her voice was tender, not bitter, not vengeful. "I believe you," she said softly. "But sometimes missing someone isn't a reason to go back. It's just proof that you once had something real." He nodded slowly. "So that's it?" She smiled. That's closure. Daniel returned, coat in hand. You ready? He asked. Olivia nodded. As they walked toward the exit, Nathaniel called out one last time. Olivia. I really did love you. She turned slightly, her eyes kind but distant. I know. And that's why I forgive you. But love without respect is just memory. Then she walked out. And with every step, she felt the weight of 12 years lift from her shoulders. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's the quiet decision to stop dancing with ghosts. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge is not revenge at all. It's peace. Outside, the night air was cool. The city lights shimmered like distant stars, and for the first time in a long time, Olivia looked up, really looked up, and smiled. Daniel glanced at her. You okay? She nodded. I am. Finally. He grinned softly. So, what's next? She breathed deeply. Living, not surviving. Just living. They say every woman who survives heartbreak is reborn twice. Once when she leaves. And again when she learns to smile without needing permission. For Olivia Holt, that rebirth began the moment she stepped out of the ballroom. The air outside was crisp, humming with city sounds and whispered possibilities. The night had witnessed her courage, now it gifted her silence. Daniel opened the car door for her, but she didn't get in right away. She turned back, looking at the hotel one last time, that glittering monument of everything she'd lost and everything she had just reclaimed. Her white gown shimmered beneath the streetlight. Her heart was quiet, not empty, not bitter. Just quiet. A few days later, Olivia returned to her apartment, the one Nathaniel had once called too simple for a billionaire's wife. But for the first time, it didn't feel small. It felt sacred. She opened the windows, let the sunlight flood the space, and began taking down old photos. Each frame carried a story, a smile, a memory, a promise. She didn't destroy them, she placed them carefully into a box labeled gratitude. She whispered, "You were a part of my becoming, but not my ending." She spent the following weeks in stillness. Morning walks through the park. Tea instead of wine. Silence instead of noise. The world didn't need to know her next move, she just needed to breathe again. But life, in its divine humor, always finds a way to introduce healing when we least expect it. Daniel called one afternoon. "Hey," his voice gentle, "I've got something to show you at the center. Think you can stop by?" She smiled. "Is this about work or your attempt at getting me to laugh again?" He chuckled. "Maybe both." When Olivia arrived at the community center, she was greeted by the laughter of children. Daniel had expanded one of his programs, teaching confidence and communication to teens from broken homes. But this time, the room looked different. On the wall hung a sign that read, "The Olivia Project, Healing Through Story." She blinked, stunned. "Daniel, what is this?" He smiled. "You said words heal. So, I thought, why not teach young girls to tell their stories? You've inspired more than you realize." Her eyes welled with tears. "I don't deserve that." He shook his head softly. "You deserve peace. And this," he gestured around, "is what peace looks like when it starts touching others." That night, Olivia stayed back to help. One girl, no older than 16, hesitated before reading her essay aloud. Her voice cracked. My father left. My mom cries every night. But maybe one day I'll stop blaming myself. Olivia knelt beside her, holding her hand. You already stopped the moment you said that out loud. It was in that moment she realized. Healing doesn't always look like joy. Sometimes it looks like showing up for someone else when you're still learning to show up for yourself. Meanwhile, Nathaniel had vanished from public sight. The media, once his ally, now painted him as a man who traded gold for dust. Victoria had moved on quickly, a new client, a new scandal. But Nathaniel couldn't move on. He sat in his penthouse surrounded by trophies of success that now looked like souvenirs from a failed war. He tried reaching out to Olivia one more time, this time, not for reconciliation, but for forgiveness. She replied with only 4 words. I already forgave you. No anger. No explanation. And for the first time, Nathaniel understood what true grace looked like. Quiet, unadvertised, final. Months passed. Spring arrived with the fragrance of renewal. Olivia's work with Daniel expanded. The Olivia Project began attracting women from across the city. Survivors of betrayal, abandonment, and silence found a voice within those walls. It wasn't about revenge. It was about rewriting narratives. One evening, after a long day, Daniel joined her at the small cafe across the street from the center. The city glowed softly behind them, streetlights flickering like patient stars. You've built something beautiful, he said, sipping his coffee. She smiled. We've built something. You kept me steady when I was ready to disappear. He looked at her long enough for her to feel the weight of his silence. Olivia, can I tell you something? She nodded. I loved you once, long before you married him. But I stepped back because I wanted you to choose your happiness, not your history. She stared at him, stunned. The air felt still. And then she smiled, a soft, knowing smile. I think I had to go through all that pain to recognize what love is supposed to feel like. And now, I think I finally do. Their friendship deepened naturally, quiet dinners, long walks, laughter that returned like sunlight after rain. But this time, there was no rush, no pretense. It wasn't about replacing Nathaniel. It was about rediscovering Olivia. Daniel never pushed. He simply stayed, proof that real love doesn't demand, it waits. One afternoon, while reviewing program applications, Daniel found Olivia outside, sitting on the steps watching the children play. He sat beside her. Funny, he said. You spent so many years in mansions, but you seem happiest here, among chaos, cranes, and little miracles. She chuckled softly. I think wealth was never the problem. Emptiness was. He nodded. And now? She looked at the horizon. Now, I'm full, not of things, but of meaning. As months became seasons, the world moved on, new scandals, new successes. But for Olivia, time no longer felt like something to survive. It was something to savor. Nathaniel eventually sold his company, retired quietly, and remarried years later, someone who reminded him, painfully, of what he had lost. But by then, Olivia's name was synonymous with resilience. Her story had become an anthem, not of revenge, but of resurrection. One autumn evening, the Olivia Project hosted its biggest event yet, the Rebirth Gala. It wasn't a celebration of wealth or fame. It was a gathering of stories of women who had once been broken but now walked in light. Olivia stood backstage, wearing a soft blue gown this time, the color of peace. The same shade she wore the day she confronted her past, now reborn into something sacred. Daniel approached, straightening his tie nervously. "Big night," he said. She smiled. "The biggest. But not for me or for them." He hesitated, then said quietly, "You know, I'm still in love with you." She turned, eyes shimmering. "I know." A pause. "And this time, I'm not afraid to love back." When they walked on stage together, applause thundered. Cameras flashed. But there was no scandal, no drama, only reverence. Olivia began her speech, her voice carrying through the grand hall. A woman who has known betrayal learns two truths: that love can wound deeper than hate, and that forgiveness can heal faster than revenge. "I once believed my story ended with heartbreak. But I learned that every ending is just an invitation to rewrite yourself. With faith, with courage, with grace." She smiled at the crowd, her eyes glistening. "So to every soul here tonight, may your pain never make you bitter. May it make you whole." The audience rose to their feet, applauding through tears. In that moment, Olivia didn't feel like the woman who had been betrayed. She felt like the woman who had conquered herself. And as the lights dimmed and the crowd lingered, Daniel took her hand. Outside, the city glowed, familiar, forgiving. "You walked away from what broke you," he whispered, "and walked into what would finally love you back." She smiled through tears. "I didn't just walk away, Daniel. I walked home, to myself." Some betrayals are blessings in disguise. Some endings are the first drafts of miracles. And sometimes, the story isn't about who hurt you,